All right, folks, welcome once again, everybody, to Irish Sports Daily Power Hour. I'm your host, Mike Frank, here with my good buddy, Jamie Uyeyama, sporting the Jays hat today, Mr.
Gotta
Toronto up
support.
there.
Gotta
God,
support.
yes, got to see that. So it'll be, we were just talking off the air about that. But anyway, before we get going, wanted to mention once again, great day to sign up for Irish Sports Daily. You can go to the front page, click on the premium section, and sign up today. Obviously, Notre Dame's back on the winning streak, and they're doing pretty well. So you still have the playoff hopes alive. A lot of discussion going on the message boards right now. A lot of people talking about the game and the future and the games this weekend, all that kind of stuff. So make sure you check that out. Also, we have Jamie's review on the offense and defense that's coming. I think the defense is up already, so be looking for that. Also, wanted to mention if you've not found us on YouTube, find us if you would. Go to YouTube, search for Irish Sports Daily, and you can sign up. You can also or subscribe and like the channel. It helps us a great deal. And also, if you would, we'd greatly appreciate you sharing the content as well. So, and as we've mentioned all the time, if you want to listen to the show live and participate in the chat during the live broadcast of our YouTube live, you can find us. We usually right after the Marcus Freeman press conference, we come on the air to talk about things that he had to say as well as the game. Before we get going, I wanted to mention our sponsor, which is ESQ Clothing, founded by ND alum Ge Wang, and Chicago's go-to for best custom suits, shirts, and sport coats. As Notre Dame reloads for the season, now's the time to refresh your wardrobe and add the perfect suit, sport coat, tuxedo, or casual jacket for fall. ESQ Master Tailors combine next-level craftsmanship with the finest fabrics to deliver a fit that's built just for you. Now with showrooms both downtown Chicago and Winnetka, book your custom fitting and step into confidence with Chicago's finest. Mention ISD at your appointment. Receive 10% off your entire purchase, and you can find them once again at esqclothing.com. All right, Yama. So the rewatch was pretty much what I thought it would be. There wasn't a whole lot of surprises for me in the rewatch. I think the thing that stood out to me again was, I think that the O-line did a good job in pass blocking for the most part. I thought they did a really good job of protecting CJ. I think CJ had all day to throw on a lot of things. There's no question about that. So that was good, but run blocking just wasn't quite there for me this week. And it wasn't just O-line. I thought tight ends missed a few blocks as well, and that type of thing. But overall, as I said, I guess in my commentary, it sure is nice to have guys like J.D. Price and Jeremiah Love. They're kind of the equalizer when your offensive line isn't having their best day. Listening to Marcus Freeman in the press conference kind of said that, maybe Boise showed him something on Saturday that they hadn't seen, and maybe that goes a little bit towards why they weren't quite as crisp running the ball as we've seen in the past. But your thoughts here on O-line?
Yeah, the protection was awesome. Again, they did such a good job, and I think Carr did such a good job of getting them into the right protection too. And I thought obviously pass pro from the backs was great as well. I think if you look at where guys like Emil Wagner and Anthony Knapp, now that you've seen them not going up against Miami's guys, they've been pretty good. They've done a pretty good job throughout the year. And I think I think they handled a lot of stuff like that. Braxton Felly kid is a good interior rusher. He got a couple pressures, but other than that, they didn't really get a lot more that they didn't get from the blitz, and they really did Notre Dame did a great job versus the blitz. I thought a lot of the stuff too with them kind of blowing stuff up with some of the runs. A lot of it was what they were doing with run blitz stuff, right? They did quite a bit of that, and so I think that played a pretty decent part in some of the stuff with the run game. Why it was. Why say first down wasn't as good as maybe you'd want it to be. But obviously that is the thing with Love and Price, is that those guys can get hit in the backfield and turn it into 8 yards. It's really incredible what those guys do, Mike. And it just the level of consistency that those guys have. And it's just one of these things where I think that's what makes Notre Dame so incredibly tough to stop, that you can do a pretty good job like schematically against them. You could even beat them up front, and still the backs are just that good.
Yeah, the thing that I guess kind of stood out to me too was, JD Price this year, his balance has gotten so much better. Before, especially on that big long run, I mean, he got knocked around pretty good, as I mentioned. They banged him up pretty good, and he stayed on his feet. And in years past, that was not something you'd see. A lot of times he would go down with contact, but his balance is so much better. I think his vision is very, very good right now. His ability to cut and burst out of that, very, very impressive. And so I think, when you look at the backs that Notre Dame has, they are a game changer. And for those who've been listening to the show for a long time, I always go back to say that the 2005 game against USC, and USC had Reggie Bush, and that was really the difference in the game, was one guy, and he just had that ability to make those plays. Well, now Notre Dame has a few of them too. They have a few guys who are like Reggie Bush, and so you can play pretty well on defense, but eventually those guys are going to gash you, and that is that's why it's so important to get elite backs and elite skill talent, because they can change the outcome of a game just like that. And that's what we saw in this game a lot, was those guys just kind of taking over and making the plays that they needed to for Notre Dame to be successful. So it's nice to have a few of those guys on their sideline at this point, or in their backfield. And I also think they're starting to get some good receivers that are starting to show some stuff as well. Malachi Fields has looked good. Will Pauling has been very, very solid. And Jordan Faison last few games has really stepped up. So now you got three guys you got to worry about. And I think if they can get Greathouse healthy and rolling, that's another guy right there. When was the last time Notre Dame had four guys at wide receiver that could really hurt you? And, I think Micah Gilbert showed in his one play, the underthrown ball, he has the ability to get deep. He can do some things as well. So they're expanding their playmaking ability, and it's just becoming harder and harder to defend. Throwing Eli Raritan in there as a pass catching tight end. Notre Dame's just getting very hard to defend. It's difficult for this to happen. Any negatives from offense that you saw that got you a little concerned?
No, nothing concerning. I think you just look at, they had the two drives where they didn't finish. They hurt themselves, right? With the beginning of the game, but like those weren't, and it's something I talked about with Greg, obviously, right after the game. In the post game, was that play that Carr missed is like he just missed. Like everything was like he made the right read. It was the right call. He got him to the right protection. Everything was right. He just missed it, and that has been something that's been so rare for him. So I think that's like one of these things that I don't think you can say like, oh, that's concerning. It's like, I mean, how often is that going to happen? Probably not very often, right? Yeah. And it hasn't. And I think you could say like he was 1 of 7 on deep balls in this game, and you could say, okay, well, he left some of those ones short, but really, I think most of those were like the ball had to be out just a little bit quicker. And that was the thing, right? And so some of that is just timing. You could say like, well, he started out like red hot throwing the deep ball at the beginning of the year. He's 9 of 14 in the first 3 games, throwing, with 20 plus air yards down the field. That's obviously outstanding. You look at like the throws against Purdue in particular, like the one to Faison, the one to Fields. Those are as good as you can get, like pretty much perfect throws. I'd say that, like, if you look in the last few games, he's like 4 of 15, right? And you'd say, okay, well, that's obviously not at the same level, and he's missed some things. But I don't think like it's not a question of just like a question of like timing more so than it is like arm strength or anything like that. I don't think there's anything there where it's like he can't make those throws, right? So I think it's just that would be the only thing that you kind of circle is like, well, you're going to monitor this. But I really just think too, like you might even be underselling the fact that the receivers have just been that good. Like Fields, to me, has been as advertised and more than the player that he was going to be. Like, yeah, you could see like, yeah, he's going to catch those, jump balls and he's going to do this.
Yeah.
But like after the catch, like he's been a beast. Like he's been great after the catch, like making people miss after the catch. Faison has been incredible this season, just in terms of everything he's done after the catch. And Mike, you talked about it all offseason, like, well, the drops, whatever, because it was like a thing with Pauling had drops at Wisconsin. Faison had problems with drops last year, right? Like that was a thing. Dropped the one pass. I mean, it wasn't even like, it wasn't an easy catch, but he dropped one against Texas A&M. Hasn't had a drop since. Eli Reardon had the 2 drops in the first game. Hasn't had a drop since. That's it for drops on the season for any pass catcher on the team. And they blocked really well, like incredibly well. Obviously, you see the effort on those long runs for Love and Price. Great job by those guys, and great job just overall with those guys there. And Faison, he's got 25 catches, leads the team. 20 of them have been for first downs. And like the last one that he had was like, an 18-yard one on, 3rd and 25. He almost turned that into a first down. Like, he's been awesome after the catch. And I think if you're looking at like the one thing where you're like, yeah, obviously Greathouse has been hurt. He hasn't had the kind of season that people kind of thought he was going to have based off of it. But how good Pauling has been, and when he's gotten his opportunities, obviously made the great catch in this game. Should have had another touchdown in this game. Fields has been awesome. And Faison has just like taken his game to another level. He's kind of been that guy that people thought he would be last year, but he was hurt for most of the year. So the offense, I think, is just as good as there was nothing about this game that made me think that like, man, this offense still isn't a rocket ship that just can take off at any time.
Yeah, I think we're going to be very pleasantly surprised, as the season goes along. They're going to get better and better. And I think the offensive line is going to get better and everything. Although I do think they're playing well right now, as far as, especially in pass protection. I think they're doing really well. Gerby at times can get a little bit wonky at times, but he's really starting to solidify a bit. I think Ashton's done great. Billy's done great. And as you mentioned, I think Knapp and Wagner have shown that they're starting to play really well too. So I love where the offense is headed. And I think you couldn't say it better that a lot of people were hard on Mike Brown and these wide receivers, but a lot of these guys were just underdeveloped players. They just hadn't, they didn't come in with a lot of polish to begin with, and you have to develop that, right? And so, I mean, heck, when you look at Fields, he was a quarterback coming in. It's going to take time for him to develop into a receiver. And I like that he looks skinnier than he did at Virginia. Like his lower body, I think he's more elusive, as you saw. And I think you're seeing, because of that, he's able to make more plays with, in space with once he catches the ball after the catch type of stuff. So very excited about it. And I think, as you mentioned, with CJ, are they underthrown balls? Yeah, I think so. But I think you were probably right in that the ball just needs to get out a little bit quicker versus, does he have the arm strength? I mean, I don't think we'll know until we see a lot more of that. But I do think it's, hey, let's get the ball out quicker. Make that decision. Let's get it out there quicker. And we'll see. He has been very good. And look, not everybody's going to play great every game. You're just not going to have your A game every game. I certainly don't have my A game every show we do here. That's for sure. So it's just, it's one of those things that some days are just going to be better than others. And I think when you rewatch the game, you can just see where all the breakdowns happened, and it was explainable for the most part why everything broke down. They should have had more scoring drives, misplay here, misthrow there, misblock here, or lots of penalties. That we've been praising the offense for, no false starts, no, procedure, no holding, those types of things. And it just seemed like one day they all came and decided to show up in one game. And and that really kind of hurt him. I mean, you talk about the first drive in the second half. When it's, I think it was 3rd and 35 or whatever it was, you're not going to come out of that. You're not going to come out of that in a positive situation. That's just, and it wasn't anything that they did execution wise. It was just
the greatest calls too.
Yeah, well, exactly. That's just the reality of it. So, it just was not the offenses as the way it was. Flipping to the defensive side, Yama, man, I think it's interesting. Marcus hasn't said anything about, we decided to change some things. He's not said anything, and I'm surprised the media hasn't asked him more about. But there's no question they're taking more gambles, right? This is starting to look more like the team defense that we saw last year. It's not the same. It's but Chris Ash is getting more aggressive. There are times they're rushing 6. They're rushing 5 more. They're getting more aggressive, and I think the linebackers are playing more downhill. And I think that has been a bonus. And then of course, anytime you get Leonard Moore back and he's playing well, and then you get guys like Tay Johnson who are truly athletic and all they need is some reps, you're starting to see, okay, well, here's what it is. Dallas Golden, Mark Zachary, same situation. They're starting to feel more comfortable, and you can do some more things with them now that they're doing this. So just overall defensive performance, what you thought here?
I mean, it was a great performance, and I think you could – I don't think you can say that, wow, okay, this is last year's defense. This is what defense is going to look like going forward. You can't do that after the start of the season was that bad. You can't. It just you're going to have to wait a while, and it's going to have to be consistent. But I think certainly in this game. So if you look at like what they did the last 2 games, they didn't blitz like barely any in the last 2 games, only 17.9% of dropbacks. I mean, Leonard Moore wasn't out there though. And so I think part of the reason that they blitz so much, they blitz 43.8% of the time in this game on dropbacks. Part of it was because they had Leonard Moore, right? Like, and when you do that, obviously he's a guy who can lock somebody up. And sometimes and you might say, well, why do they throw at him? It's like, if you got to get the ball out quick, like you're just going to get the ball out to who it is. And that's why, like on the last one, it was like Heinisch one, quick pressure. That's why the ball was out there. And that's why he was able to make the play. Right. And so they had a ton of 6-man pressure stuff on this game, but I like it because I thought this was the first game where I thought, okay, they get to like the area where it's like, hey, borderline field goal territory, like scoring territory. And you change how you call the game. And that's defense. That's what you have to call the game differently there, because you want to get havoc, or you want to get a stop, or
get a play,
right. You have to. And I think, and obviously like you're going to give up some of the underneath stuff, like early on a drive, but you have to be able to, know when you can heat a guy up. And I think one of the things too is like they obviously knew that they could take advantage of their interior offensive line. That was like definitely a big thing in this. But I mean, they blitzed Madsen. He threw 3 INTs when he was blitzed. They sacked him 3 times when he was blitzed. He had a 32.6 NFL passer rating for the blitz, and like 42.6% of the time they got pressure, they got a sack against him. And some of the times they didn't. It was like because he was like miraculously like throwing the ball away, right? So,
yes.
I think if you're going to look at like the most encouraging thing from all this though, is that they had guys just winning left and right. Like it was like a party at the quarterback. There was like 3-4 guys winning when they said sick. 3 or 4 guys win. 2 guys would block one, so that guy wouldn't win. But then anyone who was like one-on-one, even if they had enough guys in to block, Notre Dame was still winning. And that to me was the most encouraging thing. It was easily the best pass rush game for Notre Dame. Madsen only been sacked once the entire time this year. They probably could have sacked him like way more than
at least 4 more times that I can think of,
And and obviously, like, he threw 4 picks. there's obviously one pick got taken off the board because of the Anye unnecessary roughness, which was another horrible call.
Horrible call.
Horrible call. And that was something that really stood out in the rewatch. Mike, you go and see it, and you're like, he held up. Yeah. He could have just like put his full body
picked
weight,
him up and slammed on him,
and crushed his chest, and he like held up his body weight to not do that, and it still got called. But and obviously it sucks for a guy like Anye who hasn't had a good season, hasn't had a lot of those kind of plays, does make a play, and then Sneed gets a pick too, like those get taken off the board, right? So I think there was just so much there that was positive in this game from the defense, just like linebacker havoc. Obviously the DBs played another good game. They dominated their receivers for the most part, and just up front they kept winning. So it was the kind of game that, if you look at it, 10 of the or the last 16 drives for Notre Dame's defense, they gave up 10 points. So it's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Yeah, it really is. And you mentioned the Anye thing, but I mean, that was like a field position thing too. It was a huge play field position wise. Notre Dame was going to get the ball back in good position, and it's just, and I'll tell you this, I love seeing Marcus light them up about that. And some people are like, it's like, no, I think that matters. I really think it matters. I think it matters to your team that, A, our coach has our back, and 2, he's not going to put up with this, and it gets the team fired up. But then I also think it gets in the heads of the officials. It has to, especially if they knew they blew the call, which you can't tell me. You've made calls in the past, and that they're probably not the right call. But once you've made it, it's kind of hard to go back on it because you look like a fool. So I do think it matters, but you can also be a jerk too, right? And I've seen coaches that can be a jerk, and I think sometimes, like even a Brian Kelly, that can work against you at times. Where if you're just really being a jerk,
you're doing it the whole game, yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna hurt you a little bit, and so. But I love seeing Marcus get fired up like that, and I think that's just, and I don't think he's the type that's going to, disrespect or MF somebody out there. You know what I mean? I don't think he's going to do any of that type of stuff. I think he respects the jobs the officials do, but you got to let him know when that was a terrible call, and it wasn't just that call. There was a lot of bad calls, and I will say there were bad calls for
both sides,
against
both sides.
Well, yeah, I mean there really was. So it just is what it is. I want to get Greg. I want to get our producer on here and get his thoughts on what he saw.
Yes, sir.
And what I mean, and I think the question here is that a lot of Irish fans want to know, and I don't know if we can know that yet. I think we'll know in the next couple games. But do you think that what we've seen here the last few weeks, especially with Leonard getting healthy, it sucks that Devonta Smith got hurt. Hopefully he can play moving forward. But do you think we could see this defense get to a serviceable point to where if they do make the playoff, it won't be such a huge liability?
I think they're there. I mean, I think now it's just a matter of like matchups. So like the Devonta Smith thing means a lot because he's your nickel defender. And in a couple of weeks, they're going to have to go against Mekhi Lemon, who's 66% of the time in the slot. And he might win the Biletnikoff this year. So like from a matchup point of view, like that's a problem. Right. And so for Devonta Smith to re-injure himself and have to leave the game so early and he's not coming back and he's not on the depth chart, like that's a concern. But I think it's been a combination of Ash learning his personnel. I mean, Marcus Freeman said it today. He learned his personnel. He made personnel decisions where they got guys in and out of the lineup. And I think learning how to use his linebackers, the defense then becoming more comfortable as well. I mean, they're clearly more comfortable. You're not seeing everyone turning around and looking at each other, right? And just kind of not knowing what the coverage is supposed to be. I think getting Tay Johnson in there matters. So but this isn't to say they're going to be as good as last year's defense. I don't know that they're just going to be a major liability. In the last 10 quarters, they've given up, 3 touchdowns in the last 10 quarters. I mean, that's good football. I mean, Arkansas is a good football team, especially offensively. And to give up 13 points in that game, I mean, obviously you're playing good football. Boise State's a good football team, right? They know how to – they're a good program. They're not good relative to Notre Dame. And I think that's a part of this too that gets kind of lost is when we say a team isn't good or a team isn't that, it's relative to what Notre Dame is. But relative to college football, Boise State can move the ball and they can play offense. And they had a very tough time against Notre Dame. So I don't know that they're there in the sense that we want them to be there, in the sense that like Marcus Freeman's standard. But if you look around college football, I mean, like I said on the post game, like Penn State with their defensive coordinator hire, Jim Knowles, they gave up 42 points to UCLA.
Yeah.
Right. Like things happen in college football and they got to get sorted. Marcus Freeman is not a patient person. He does not sit there and mill on problems. He solves problems. And I feel like they've solved the problem. Not to the point where I think they can be totally dominant, but I think they're kind of there.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that's encouraging, I saw more, as you talk about wins, I saw more Bryce Young wins. I certainly saw more Boubacar Traore wins. I thought Heinisch was very effective rushing the passer. Obviously, as Greg said, they got the right personnel out there now, finally doing what they need to do. Do you think that this now, is this encouraging? Do you think we'll see the pass rush we were hoping to see this year?
I mean, I think that part of it is you're going to see it. Part of it is matchup, obviously, right? But I think it's been building with a lot of those guys anyways, right? Like, I think everybody thought that you're going to come into the season and guys are just going to be like hair on fire and winning right away. And it just rarely is that for guys, especially who haven't done it at that level. And even if you look at, say, Isaiah Foskey, remember, like he came off the big, sack season that he had. Everyone thought he was going to just be dominant the next year. And it wasn't like that right away. Like it took a while for it to get going. And really, I don't even think he really kind of like built on it that much. He was kind of just the same. Like he's a terrific finisher, but he wasn't quite as dominant, where I can see guys like getting better. It's part of it is development, right? Like part of it is development in getting these reps. Like Boubacar hasn't played that much ball. Like he hasn't. He's been awesome. He has been so good, like just complete. Yeah. And I think like, and I think there's so many guys that are so close to like having like breakout, like 2 or 3 sacks in a game. And I really think like, so like Bryce Young, for example, people like, they're not, he's not, coming out and being his dad right away or something like that. He's not that, but I think he's getting awful close. And I think, Donovan Heinisch has 7 pressures in this game. And some of those are like, just extra like motor pressures where he's getting extra, but those count too. And those were big in the game. Also, he was winning clean. Botello's been playing better. Like all these guys and the backers are winning too. Like Drake Bowen has been awesome rushing the passer in the last couple of games. He has been great. And obviously you're seeing that too. Him and KVA together, when they're working together on like when they're doing that cross dog stuff, it is like, like it looks so good. It looks amazing. So I just think there is certainly like there's so much in it that with confidence. And I think you're kind of starting to see that. And just even that, like Dawson, you saw him obviously have a good game, and Rubio played another good game. Like there's just a lot there that I think Mullins, is another guy. When he gets a chance, like Mullins is going to be awesome. Like he is going to be a special guy. I think
I'll take credit for that. I'll take credit for that.
You're just going to take credit.
No, who told you he's going to be good? It was me. I told you he's going to be good. Even though we got hurt his senior year, I told you he's going to be good.
You got to listen.
Go look it up, brother. Go look it up. I'm telling you, buddy.
You got to listen to us. You got to listen to us.
You're acting like it was only you, Mike.
You got to listen to us, and you got to trust us on these things regarding who's the D-line prospects and how to spend your time. You got to trust us on how to spend your time in your free time. You want to get better and you want to start building on things, then you can continue to build your pickleball game with H2 Pickleball. Founded by Notre Dame alum Todd Hill, he's teaming with fellow alums Jack Gibbs and Will Howells, who's a top 10 pickleball pro, to bring Notre Dame fans the Notre Dame Pickleball Crew League. Besides football, what better way to connect and engage Notre Dame fans than through pickleball? Membership is free, and members will have access to special pickleball events and discounts. So if you've already decided and you need to get better, like Notre Dame's defense is getting better, and to build, then the next event is just for you. The next event is a Will House Pickleball Clinic on the Friday before the Syracuse game. Members will also get discounted tickets to the Syracuse game. Contact Todd at h2pickleball.com or call him at 574-339-5195 to join the league. Be sure to visit the H2 Pickleball facility in Mishawaka when you are in town. H2 Pickleball is located at 55801 Evergreen Plaza Drive in Mishawaka, Indiana.
Yeah, I just interesting topic about Boubacar. I mean, and you know, we compare him to Foskey. I think Boubacar is way more advanced than Foskey was at the same time.
He's going to be a way better player than Isaiah.
I think
Foskey.
so. I think so too. I do. And I mean, we won't even talk about the future, you know, because I do think that there's some concern about interior defensive linemen next year. But I think, you know, as long as Boubacar's back, they're going to be pretty good rusher the passer next year as well. So that will be exciting to see. Jamie, we get to the special teams part of things, and we don't talk about it enough. And usually we don't talk about it because it's never an issue. But the kicker situation, it's getting a little bit concerning, I think. And, you know, it seems like these things that tend to linger, we'll see. But Marcus, in his comments about Noah Burnett, I don't know, man, it didn't sound very positive, like he'd be back this week. And you can tell he's frustrated kind of with, you know, why is the guy getting injured and then getting injured again? You know, what's going on here? And they're trying to find the magic thing. But I really think that, you know, this could really come back to hurt you. You know, it may not happen this week because I don't expect it to be a down to the wire game, but it certainly could hurt you next week when they play USC. That could very easily be down to the wire. So, you know, they got to get this figured out. You know, it's really kind of the one thing that is a little bit concerning. And your thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, they got lucky last year that it didn't cost them. Like they were just winning enough that it didn't matter that. But if you think about like Mitch Jeter last year was healthy when it mattered. Like they needed him against Texas A&M in week 1, and they got those big kicks. And then when they needed him in the playoff, he was clutch, right? Like he was healthy then. So maybe it'll just be to the point that they won't need him. But like, I mean, that USC game is looming, and that could be a game where you need a big kick or two, right? Like that is something that could really hurt you. Like, I mean, the first extra point was obviously like very concerning. Like that was like, you know, Matt Freeman could have blocked that one, you know, could have stuck his big paw up and got that, you know.
I'm sure he could have. Yes.
I know Matt's not listening to this, so we can take shots at him.
We can take shots at him all day. Yeah. He'll never listen to this.
It is something that is legitimately concerning. And it's not to say that like Eric Schmidt might be totally fine at some point, right? Like people thought John Doerr was like, no one thought John Doerr, it was going to turn out for him. And then it did turn out for him. So it could, you know, it could happen. It maybe even happens this week or something like that. But it is obviously you don't want to go into any game not feeling confident about your kicker. And that is something that I think is legitimately concerning. And it's probably like the only thing right now that if you're going into it where you're like, man, this is like a real concern, it's like got to be at the top of the list.
Well, we've seen, and it wasn't the kicker's fault, but we've seen a special teams play cost you the game. I mean, we've already seen it, right? It cost them the game, or at least the chance to win the game. It certainly did. And so it is a big deal, and it can be a big deal. And had Buckner caught the ball, who knows what that A&M game would have turned out to be, and where Notre Dame would be ranked right now. They'd probably be ranked pretty high right now, and we wouldn't have to worry about it. So it is important, and it is concerning. And I'm sure Marcus Freeman is worried about it just as much as we are. Yama, did you get a chance to, like me? I've watched the last few weeks. I've watched a ton of football. I've just sat, multiple TVs and just glued, just watching everybody, not just Notre Dame's opponents, which I've watched all of them multiple times, but really all the best teams around college football. We'll talk about NC State here in a minute, but when you look a little further down the road, anything stand out to you about some of Notre Dame's future opponents?
Well, obviously, like USC had the bye this week, right? So they weren't playing, but I think it's going to be interesting with USC because they're a team that has zero depth. That was their, problem, and they're banged up. So I want to see what they are out of the bye week, and that's obviously one that you're looking at, like circled, like how healthy are they going to be for Notre Dame? Because it looks like they're going to be down at least their starting center. I don't know what Elijah Page, their starting left tackle, what his status is going to be. With some of these other guys that they've had beat up, their secondary is beat up and they're not good. So it's there's definitely concerning things with them, but they are obviously. Greg mentioned Mekhi Lemon, Jacoby Lane is a stud. Like they have two stud receivers, and Maeva has played well this year. He has played really well, and they have good backs. It's the same story. They always have that, but it's the other kind of questions for them. But there's a big gap between, I think, them and everybody else left on the schedule for Notre Dame. Like I would say if you watch like the Pitt and BC game, you could say that, well, Pitt, they definitely looked so much better with the freshman quarterback. He was significantly better than the guy who was playing there before, Eli Holstein, who was the Alabama transfer, who I frankly didn't think was very good at all. Right. So I would say that, if you're looking at the rest of the schedule, Navy obviously has a great offense. That's a game that they're pretty much the same team as they were last year in terms of their offense. They're going to be difficult. Like that game could be like a high scoring game. Right. So you're going to have to get stops and you're going to have to get havoc. They haven't played anybody really yet, but they still have the same kind of weapons, and Drew Cronick's a very good coordinator. I think like Pitt, it all depends. It's like, well, is that quarterback legit and he's going to be good? Or BC, like they had 6 starters out. BC sucks this year. Like Notre Dame is going to just destroy BC. Stanford stinks. Syracuse, now that Angeli's out, they stink. Angeli was clearly a lot better than Collins, and that's something that matters. And they're also a team that doesn't have a lot of depth. And Pitt, their running back Desmond Reed has missed a couple games, and he's like their best offensive weapon. So it's like, is he going to be back? Like the NC State game, I think is one where you would say, like, offensively, yeah, they're pretty dangerous and they've got some guys and stuff too, but their defense stinks, just absolutely is atrocious. Like they've really been picked apart through the transfer portal, and they haven't developed like the defensive linemen like they used to. So they're just not the same, and they've give up way too many. They're way too boom or bust, very similar to Boise State in that way. And probably I think they're a worse defense than Boise State too. So it really kind of sets up, I think, if you're looking at the schedule, like they're going to face some pretty good offenses, but just there's not a lot of good defense left on the schedule for them.
I don't think there's really a good defense left on the schedule if you look at it. I think SC at times can play fairly well defensively, but at other times they look like SC of the last 10 years where, they'll play well for 3 plays and then they'll have a bust back there and a big play happens. And so that's been what I've seen with SC. And that Michigan game is going to be interesting because it will be a physical game for sure. And I'm sure Sharon Moore is going to want to bring the physical to SC. So we'll see. They could be beat up on defense too by then too, because I do think that's going to be a very kind of smacking around type of game,
very body blow type of game.
Yeah, and I mean, look, Michigan has to play it that way. Their passing game just isn't quite there yet, so they're going to have to try and focus on running the game and running the ball, and so we'll just see how that all unfolds. But I'm excited about where Notre Dame stands. I think they have a really good opportunity here if they just stay healthy, right? Stay healthy and kind of improve a little bit on defense. They'll be in good shape once these games come up, and so we just got to get through this week. And speaking of this week, I've watched the team a little bit. I think defensively they're not very good. I think offensively they have some guys who can make some plays, and I'll be honest, I'm kind of glad that the next two teams that they face are like this, because I think it's a challenge for this defense, right? And I think it's a challenge for Chris Ash in how do I, get them to believe, because this type of offense, these types of teams with multiple weapons and pretty good quarterbacks are the types of players that you're going to play in the playoff, right? If you get to that point. So I want to see, again, opportunities of this defense having to stop some teams and having to stop some guys with some weapons. So, while it may not be pretty, throughout the game, and I'm sure I'll be complaining as I always do about the defense, I think it's going to be a big test about how much have we grown as a defense. How much has the Irish defense grown, and can we start to count on them a little bit more in these games? Your thoughts here about what you see with North Carolina State?
Yeah, I think, that is the thing, that if you look at like Bailey, their quarterback, he is a good player. He was a guy who was a true freshman last year, had a good, CJ Bailey had a really good true freshman season, but looked like a freshman in a lot of it. And he's having a good year. He's 15th in QBR. He's a guy who can really chuck the ball down the field. He's, big. He's 6'6", 215 pounds. He's a guy who could escape pressure and all that too. I think, there's some things with him, where he takes some chances with the ball that haven't really caught up to him quite yet, where he had a lot more picked last year, and that was more of a problem for him. They really haven't played anybody good on defense. So that's
not
another kind of thing that is,
yeah.
I mean, I'm talking about even a competent one.
Oh, sure. Duke and Va-Tech are really the two best they played. Well, I shouldn't say that. I mean, Virginia, they did beat Virginia, but I think Virginia was just kind of finding themselves at that point. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
But yeah, no, but losing to Virginia Tech is kind of, it says a lot about kind of where they're at, right? And I think their offensive line too is they have a really good left tackle. Jacarius Peace is a good left tackle. He's been banged up a bit, but he's a good player. I don't really think they're great, across the board. I do think the tight end is good. Justin Jolie is good. The receivers can all run. And then they have Hollywood Smothers, a very good back. He's one of these guys who's explosive. But if you kind of take that guy out of the game, I think they're going to have a really hard time. Because I think if he has to drop back 40 something times in the game, I think it's going to be the same kind of thing. Notre Dame was going to get enough pressure. They're going to get to him. They're going to sack him. And I think that is kind of will be the big thing. They got to get the havoc. They got to get the havoc in this game. And like you said about their defense is bad. It's not good at all. They really just from a personnel perspective, they don't have enough. They're 101st in EPA per drop back versus FBS competition, 113th the sack rate. They don't get a lot of big pass rush. They're very boomer bust in terms of what they do. I talked about the boomer bust thing, but where 13th in rushing success rate, 98th in EPA per rush, though. They give up a lot of long runs, and not a good thing when you're going to play Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love, right? And and they're 118th in third down, against FBS competition, right? And so I just don't see how, like, unless Notre Dame has another game where it's like, well, they really stopped themselves again.
Yeah.
And where also then Notre Dame's defense like reverts back to what you saw at the beginning of the year. I don't know. I don't think that there's a reason why the spread is so large. I really think, like, Notre Dame has a chance to, like, really put it on them.
I don't get too wrapped up in, like, past games and stuff like this. And I do think you can learn some things, when you look and you see that, hey, they scored just 2 weeks ago, or I guess it's 3 weeks ago, 20 against Va Tech, who just fired their coach, you're just like, that's not very good. And then you see that they gave up 45 against Duke on defense. And, I know Duke's not terrible. They're not a terrible team, but 45 points against Duke is, that's going to be a bit different. Duke doesn't have Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love, and their receivers, probably aren't as talented. I'm certain their offensive line isn't as talented. CJ Carr's pretty good. So, I have to look at that and say, okay, this week they played a real tomato can. There's no question about that. And whipped up on them as you should. And so I'm sure they're feeling pretty good about it, coming into this game. You are still 4-2, but your wins are not against anybody that I would say was other than Virginia. You got to give them credit for the Virginia win. You just do. Overall, I'm not overly concerned about it. The thing that I think Notre Dame has done well recently is create turnovers and protect the football. And you can have a game like you did on Saturday offensively, where you're just not hitting all cylinders if you get turnovers and you protect the football. And so as long as Notre Dame does that and continues to do that, I feel like Notre Dame's in really good shape here. And should have a chance to win out the rest of the way. Now, we've seen, as you talked about, look at Penn State. It's easy to just kind of overlook some teams, and you can't do that. But I think it's kind of like I said in my commentary. This team seems to be forming into a Marcus Freeman type of team where they're not always the prettiest, and they're not always the flashiest, and they're not always executing at a very, very high level, but they don't usually beat themselves. I feel like they beat themselves a little bit in that Miami game, and certainly in the Texas A&M game. But I think I don't want to say I know, but I think that they're getting past that now into where they're starting to play very good complementary football, offense, defense, special teams, and they're just not beating themselves. And even though you have a frustrating game like you did offensively and defensively with some penalties and doing some stupid things, the reason it wasn't close was because they weren't doing the mortal sins of turning the ball over, and you were also creating turnovers. And so that, I think, should give us a lot of hope and focus and knowing that they have a chance to be pretty good down the stretch here. Thoughts here?
Yeah, I think if you look at, you say that this past game, if this was the CJ Carr stinker of a game, like, because he missed, some deep balls and whatever, he didn't throw one ball that was ever in danger of getting picked. Like, there was nothing there where he made a decision where you saw that early in the first few games, right? Where he had he had some picks, and then also he threw some balls too that didn't get picked that maybe should have been picked, right? And that hasn't happened, right? Like, that didn't happen at all in this game, right? So I think as long as they kind of protect the football and they do their part there, I do think they're going to. There was something what Leonard Moore said after the game when he talked about how, like, they kind of found their identity during this game. I think that is one of those things that, like, just having that kind of confidence, regardless of like how they feel about Chris Ash or compared to Al Golden or whatever, just like knowing like, hey, we're pretty good. We can be this good. We can be even better, right? Like, I just think the defense is going to just continue to kind of like keep building. And not that they won't get challenged in this game a little bit, and then a lot more against USC. I just think as long as they're just like, if they continue to be as sound as they've been, I mean, I just see them blowing NC State out.
Last topic, and I know this is not it's not necessarily pertinent now, but I'm sure you saw the Big Ten, and they're talking about now all of a sudden you're getting some venture capitalists buying in and all this type of stuff and all these conversations that are out there. And I want to get Greg's thoughts too, and this will be the last topic. How do you think this changes if this starts to happen? How do you think this changes who Notre Dame is and what they're going to be moving forward? If we see the Big Ten do this and they're getting an extra, $110 million and the SEC and all these teams start doing this, does Notre Dame have to do something at some point? Start with you, Greg.
Well, they're doing it for their conference affiliation, right? I mean, it seems to me that they are. Why are you going out and getting all this money when there's supposed to be money coming in? I feel like this is a school problem within the conferences that doesn't really apply to Notre Dame. That's just my read of it. I feel like Notre Dame is kind of separate, and I think a lot of people are asking the question. It's like, why are you doing this when you're supposed to be having an influx of money? And I don't know that Notre Dame is having that problem, and I don't know where these other schools are coming from that problem. So I don't know. I mean, I don't want to say that like Notre Dame will never go private equity, because it's not a good idea to say never in this business, but the impetus for this is unclear to me, other than it's a trend that's been happening before. So I don't know that there's any imminent danger of like Notre Dame going this route, but that's just kind of my read of it. So I'm interested to get Jamie's thoughts, because I know he thinks a lot about this sort of thing.
Well, you know what I was thinking about this, because I think it's so stupid that the Big Ten is doing this. I think the guy, Tony Petitti's the commissioner of the Big Ten, is a moron. I think he's shown that just based on like all of his, decisions that he's made so far since then. Like he's so being outclassed by like every single like move that he's made to try to like power play something. People have just responded, well, like, okay, well, I guess we'll just go to 9 conference games then. And then it's like, okay, well, now now Indiana looks so stupid for their dumb, scheduling and all that, like all of that kind of thing. And the ACC and the SEC made sure to be like, well, we got to play at least 10 power conference teams and all this. And like, it just, now the Big Ten looks stupid and it looks bad. So I guess this thing is there because enough of these, you got freaking 18 teams in the league, and there's probably 8 of them or maybe more. Maybe there's 10 of them that don't have the money that, that they want to be able to spend to compete. Like they think that like all of a sudden you're going to have all this money and you're just going to like buy all these players. Well, everybody else is going to raise that money and they're still going to, get that too. So it seems like such like a short-sighted move to me for them to do that. Like I could totally understand if like someone if the ACC, if they were kind of doing it, like you saw the thing with Virginia Tech, or I don't know if you guys saw it, but how they need like $240 million of like money to come in order for their athletic department to compete. And you're like, well, I understand. Like they're probably not like, they're not going to be able to raise the corporate money. They're not getting enough money from their media deals and all of this. And they have to do that because they want to try to compete at a certain level, like where they used to be. And they're hiring a new coach, all of this kind of stuff. I get it. But for the Big Ten, like, it's like, well, Rutgers all of a sudden thinks they're going to just like, this money is going to change where they're at. I guess maybe that's a thing. And it's just like the Big 12, it's like Texas buying all these people and they're all of a sudden going to do that. It's like, I don't know if that's just going to that's not going to work every year. Not all the, those guys are going to hit every year through the portal. And Notre Dame, the one thing we know about Notre Dame is that whatever they need to do, they're able to do. They have that option. Like if it comes down to it, everybody's getting private equity money. You need this influx of money. Notre Dame can get it. They can absolutely get it anytime they want. They can get more than most teams that whatever. It's pretty much at their will to do it. It's just so stupid to get that and brought into college sports when it's just so obvious that there's already this big gap between certain schools that it's not going to close because of that. Like that isn't going to fix things, right? Because there's still a question of well, Ohio State's still going to bring in more revenue than everybody else, right? Mm-hmm. And Notre Dame's still going to bring in more revenue than all these other teams. And you can't close that gap. You just can't with private equity money. That's not real money. It's not going to stay. It's not just, they don't just give you this money. They own you.
And they're in control of it. Like, when has Notre Dame ever given up control like that? Like, they're just never, and they don't need to. That's the thing.
No, they don't have to. And that's why they other teams might do this and Notre Dame might not ever have to. They might not have to.
Yeah. I
think it depends. And here, I hope it doesn't happen, because I think it's terrible for college football. Anything corporate should just not be involved in it, period. And there's already too much of it in there to begin with. But here's the thing that scares me. A couple things. I remember living in South Bend, and they had a terrible deficit in Indiana, and so they decided to sell the toll road, right, to some Chinese company, and it's been a disaster ever since. And so you kind of look at that and you say, okay, but something very dear to my heart is music. And, I remember, I can't remember who the first one was, but, these record companies came in and they decided, well, we're just going to buy up all these catalogs of all these famous musicians. And I kept thinking, okay, well, maybe some people who need the money, maybe they'll do it. And they were usually the first people who started. But then, some guys I really respected started selling their catalogs. These people are about dead. What? I mean, you can't even spend it. Why are you selling your catalogs? And more and more of these people that I really respect started selling their music, their rights to their music. And I kept saying, well, Bob Dylan's never going to do that. That'll never happen. I guarantee you Neil Young will never do it. BS. Both of them sold it. I was floored when Neil Young sold his publishing. Now, he has more control over it than other people do. But still, this is the thing that concerns me about it is once somebody starts doing it, then everybody says, oh, man, I can't fall behind. I guess we got to jump in here, too. I just hope the Big Ten and the powers in the Big Ten, because to be honest with you, if I'm Ohio State and I'm Michigan, I'm like, why are we doing this? Right? I mean, I realize that I may get outvoted when it's 18-2, but I got a lot at stake here, and I can already outspend all these people. So I'm not for this. I wouldn't be for it if I'm Ohio State or Michigan. And I certainly probably wouldn't be if I'm Penn State. But, if you're a team like Nebraska or you're a team like Indiana or some of these others are like, they're way deficit. They're operating in big deficits right now. And so they're desperate for this money. And so there's the haves and the have-nots. And the haves hopefully got to have enough power to say, yeah, no, we're not doing that. Or we're leaving if you do that, because I do think it's going to ruin college football. When I saw this, I was like, this is just terrible. This is just not what college football needs. And it concerns me. And to be honest with you, I know I've been saying this for a while because I really believe this is going to happen. There's going to be the college football package. I'd rather as a fan pay for the college football package than I would have any of the corporate takeover or any sort of percentage involved in owning parts of college football. So I mean, it's the same thing, but at least I have the option as a fan to choose to buy it or not. I just think if you're going to go this route, I think it's going to be really bad for college football, and we'll start to see more of this crap start to creep in. And that was just a big concern of mine. And I really hope Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, some of these bigger power groups, just say, nah, let's not do this. This is a dumb idea. And I don't know. We just got to hope we just got to hope that, that's what's going to happen. And we'll see. But it was a concern of mine. So, all right, guys, anything you want to add before we close down the show?
No.
Hitting hustle tomorrow at 12 Eastern time. So,
all right.
Final film review of the Boise State game.
Yeah. Everybody feeling good about that? You feeling good about the win, by the way?
I personally feel fine.
Yeah.
I think the sloppiness that everyone is kind of pointing at is like general sloppy. I thought it's a good thing when you win the game and you play that way. Like it happens every year. I remember last year they had a couple of these. The Georgia Tech game was like just kind of the same deal. I think the Miami Ohio game was kind of the same deal. Like you have these throughout the season. I thought they played well, right? From the running backs played well. I thought CJ Carr played okay. They just missed on like the final piece of getting the ball into the end zone a couple of times, and it cost them some points, some cosmetic points there. But you win by 3 touchdowns. Like I thought it was fine. And to me, winning 28-7 in terms of the context of this season is so much better than like 49-28 or something like that. We know the offense can score tons of points, but like we need to see the defense like stop teams. And they were able to so it's good.
I think it was important to close out the game on defense, right? If they would have given up a touchdown or 10 points, which we've seen teams in the past do when you have a lead and there's like 8 minutes left to go in the game and you're not as focused, and they came out and they made plays. And I think that that's important. I do. But I think it's a good teaching moment for the coaches to say, look, we did a lot of good, but if we would have just did this game's over with, and you're not even playing the third quarter or the fourth quarter, So I think it's a good teaching situation. Any final thoughts from you, Yama?
No, I agree with Greg. Like, I think that it's just one of those games where those games happen during the year. And if it happens in one of those games where you win by 21 points, like they covered, I think the original spread was like 20.5. They covered in the game. So they did what they were supposed to do. And they did it in a way that was probably better for them. Like in terms of, like what Greg said with the defense. And then I think you also have to remember they only had 9 possessions on offense in the game. So they scored a touchdown on 4 of them. So, all in all, that's pretty good.
All right, gentlemen. Well, that's going to be it, folks. I hope you enjoyed the show. Remember, if you're not a member, sign up for Irish Sports Daily. Go to irishsportsdaily.com, click on the premium section, sign up. Also, check us out on YouTube. Search for Irish Sports Daily. Please subscribe, link. And if you like the show, please share it with your Irish friends and family. Let them know. We greatly appreciate you spreading the word. Thanks for listening and watching. We'll talk to you next week on Power Hour.